This story is titled, My Parents Sold My Gaming PC Behind My Back for Sister Shopping Spree, so I moved out and never looked back. Hi everyone! Before we dive in, a quick favor. If you enjoy content like this, please hit the subscribe button. It's free, supports the channel, and makes sure you never miss out on amazing videos. Alright, let's get started. Hey everyone, I don't usually post stuff like this, but I need to vent because I'm still fuming over what went down a few months ago. A bit about me first. I'm 22, and I've been into gaming and PC building for as long as I can remember. It's not just a hobby, it's been my passion since I was a kid. I've spent years saving up from part-time jobs, freelance gigs, and every birthday or holiday gift I could stretch to build what I called my dream rig, a custom $3,600 gaming PC. It wasn't just about gaming either. I used it for freelance graphic design, which helped me earn extra cash and learn some skills for the future. Now, let me introduce you to my family. My parents are the classic we know what's best types, but their definition of best usually revolves around my younger sister, Tiffany. Tiffany is 18 and has always been the golden child. If you've ever met someone who thinks the world revolves around them, that's her. She's all about designer clothes, expensive shoes, and anything trendy. And my parents? They bend over backward to make sure she has everything she wants, even if it means stepping on me to do it. So, I grew up in a house where it was always clear Tiffany came first. If money was tight, it meant I had to give something up. My mom would say things like, "You're older, you can handle disappointment better," or, "You're a boy, you don't need as much." I got used to it and figured, whatever, I'll just work hard for what I want. I didn't resent Tiffany. I just focused on my own goals and stayed out of their way. Fast forward to a few months ago. It was a regular Saturday. I'd been out with my friend Ethan. He's my best buddy and the guy I game with the most. We were talking about the next big gaming tournament we wanted to join and even brainstorming strategies for how we'd dominate. I got home that afternoon, ready to hop on my PC and start practicing. But when I walked into my room, there was the surprise. My desk was empty. My PC, my monitor, my peripherals, everything was gone. For a second, I thought I'd been robbed, but nothing else in the house seemed out of place. I ran downstairs to find my parents sitting in the living room, casually chatting over coffee like it was just another day. "Hey, where's my computer?" I asked, trying not to freak out. Mom glanced at me, not even remotely bothered. "Oh, we sold it." I stared at her, trying to process what I'd just heard. "You what?" "Sold it." "What do you mean you sold it?" Dad sighed like I was being dramatic. "Your sister needed new clothes for an event. We didn't have the money, so we sold the computer. It was just sitting there." "Just sitting there?" My voice got louder. "That computer wasn't just sitting there. I worked for years to build it. I use it for my freelance work." "Don't take that tone with us," Mom snapped. "We're your parents, and we did what was best for the family. Tiffany has an important event, and you can always save up for another computer." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Save up for another one? Do you even understand how much time and effort went into building that PC? And what about my work? How am I supposed to meet deadlines now? And WTF is that event for Tiffany that's more important than my computer? Dad, in full dad mode, waved me off. "Freelance work isn't a real job anyway. You spend more time playing games than working." They always said that, and I didn't care. Gaming was part of my life, sure, but that PC wasn't just for fun. It was how I earned money and built something entirely my own. The fact that they couldn't see that, or didn't care, was like a slap in the face. I stormed back to my room, but I couldn't calm down. I texted Ethan to tell him what happened. He was just as shocked. "Dude, that's insane. They didn't even ask you first?" "Nope, just sold it for Tiffany's stupid event," I replied. "She's so spoiled, man. You should have hidden the PC or something." Hindsight, right? But at that moment, all I could think about was how years of effort were wiped out in an instant, and no one in my family seemed to care. That night, I decided to confront Tiffany. I walked into her room, and there she was, spinning around in front of her mirror in one of her new dresses. "Do you even know what Mom and Dad did to buy you all this stuff?" I asked, leaning against her doorframe. She barely glanced at me. "What are you talking about?" "They sold my computer, my $3,600 gaming rig, gone just so you could have your designer haul." She shrugged, still admiring herself. "So? It's just a computer. You can always build another one." I couldn't believe her indifference. That wasn't just a computer, Tiffany. It was years of saving, working, and building. It was my livelihood. "Not my problem," she said with a smug grin. "It's not like I told them to sell it." She paused for a second, her tone turning defensive. "Besides, it's not my fault they thought it was a good idea. They're the ones who actually sold it, not me." Her words made my blood boil. "You mentioned it, didn't you? You knew exactly what they'd do, and you let it happen." Tiffany rolled her eyes like I was being dramatic. "Oh, please. Don't act like I control what mom and dad do. If they sold your precious little computer, it's because they thought it was the best choice. That's on them, not me. I stood there staring at her. I couldn't believe how heartless she was. She paused for a second and added, maybe if you weren't so obsessed with your little games, you'd understand what's actually important. I have an image to maintain. You're just sitting in your room playing video games all day. I walked out before I said something I'd regret. Talking to Tiffany was pointless. She didn't see the problem because she'd never had to work for anything in her life. Everything she wanted was handed to her on a silver platter, and my parents were happy to keep it that way. Over the next few days, things at home were tense. My parents acted like nothing happened, while Tiffany paraded around in her new clothes. Every time I thought about how casually they decided to sell something so important to me, my frustration grew. Ethan kept checking in, trying to keep me grounded. You gotta do something, man. Don't let them get away with this. And yeah, here where I am right now. I think Ethan is right. I couldn't just sit back and let them treat me like a doormat, but I also keep thinking of sucking it up and ignore it. I truly don't know anymore. Do you guys think I'm overreacting? If my parents thought they could walk all over me, they were about to learn otherwise. The days that followed were rough. I could barely look at Dad and Mom without feeling like my blood was boiling. Every time Tiffany waltzed past me, flaunting her designer haul, it was like she was rubbing it in my face. I tried to avoid them as much as possible, holding up in my room with my old beat-up laptop. I used it to get by with freelance work, but that shit was so slow, like using a toaster to bake a cake. It was a far cry from my custom-built PC, and every time I struggled to meet a deadline or fix a crash, my frustration grew. Ethan was a lifeline during all this. He kept me sane when I felt like I was drowning in frustration. He'd call me up at random times just to check in, or talk about something completely unrelated, like the latest game updates or a funny meme he'd seen. One night, as I was venting to him again about how ridiculous my family was being, he said, "You know what? It's not personal, Sonny. It's strictly business. Except in your case, they made it personal, and now they're treating it like business. It was personal. This wasn't just some financial transaction. This was my family showing me exactly where I stood in their priorities." At that moment, I realized I had to do something, not just to get my computer back, but to make them see they couldn't keep treating me like an afterthought. So, I gathered every piece of proof I could find that the PC was mine. Receipts from the components I'd bought, photos of the build process, and even screenshots of my freelance earnings to show how important it was for my work. I also reached out to the person who had bought the PC. They were sympathetic but firm. No refunds unless I paid them back the $1,200 my parents had sold it for. And here I am right now. I'm actually thinking about letting it go. It seems like too much trouble. And honestly, the thought of confronting my parents again makes me want to smash my head against a wall. Do you guys think I'm overreacting? Should I just suck it up and move on? Update 1. Hey folks, I didn't think things could get messier, but somehow they have. As I told you before, I was torn between choosing to stay silent or confronting my family. But then Ethan reminded me, if you don't stand up for yourself now, they'll just keep doing it. They'll think they can take whatever they want from you whenever it's convenient for them. He was right. This wasn't just about the PC anymore. It was about respect. So I confronted them at dinner. I figured it was the best time to get them all in one place. I sat down at the table, staring at my parents while Tiffany scrolled through her phone, completely oblivious. Mom was mid-sentence about some neighborhood gossip when I cut her off. "I want my money back," I said, placing a folder of documents on the table. Dad raised an eyebrow. "What money?" "The $1,200 you got from selling my PC," I said firmly. "I built that computer with my own money. Legally, it belongs to me. You had no right to sell it." Mom let out an exaggerated sigh, like I was a toddler throwing a tantrum. "We've already been over this. Your sister needed help, and we made a decision as a family." "No, you made a decision for the family without asking me," I shot back. "That's theft, plain and simple." Dad leaned back in his chair, his face darkening. "Watch your tone, boy. We're your parents. Everything in this house belongs to us. You live under our roof, so technically, that computer was ours." "That's not how it works," I said, keeping my voice steady even though I wanted to scream. I pulled out a receipt and held it up. "This says I paid for the parts with my own money. This is proof that it was mine. And this," I handed them the buyer's copy of the transaction, "proves you sold it for $1,200. You owe me." Mom gasped like I just told her I was disowning them. "How dare you accuse us of stealing? We did this for Tiffany. She's your sister. Family is about sacrifice." "Yeah, it seems like I'm the only one making sacrifices," I snapped. "Tiffany gets everything handed to her, and I'm expected to just roll with it? Not anymore. Either you pay me back, or I'll take legal action." You wouldn't dare, Mom hissed. Try me, I said, locking eyes with her. Tiffany, who had been silent up until now, finally chimed in. Oh my God, are you seriously threatening Mom and Dad over a computer? You're pathetic. No, I said, glaring at her. What's pathetic is that you're perfectly fine with taking advantage of someone else's hard work without a second thought. You knew what they did, and you didn't care. She rolled her eyes. It's not my fault they decided to sell it. I didn't make them do anything. I shot back. You mentioned it to them. You knew exactly what you were doing, Tiffany. She gave me an attitude. I only mentioned your computer, because you're always complaining about how busy you are with work. I thought you'd appreciate the break. Her voice was calm, like she was the victim here. Appreciate the break? I said, my voice rising. Do you even hear yourself? That computer was my livelihood. Tiffany smirked, unfazed. Wow, you're twisting this into my fault? You're the one who's always talking about how you're independent. I figured you wouldn't mind helping out the family for once. Isn't that what being independent is all about? My fists clenched under the table. Helping out? You didn't need a designer haul, Tiffany. You just wanted it. There's a difference, she scoffed. Maybe you're just mad because I know how to get what I want, and you're too busy sulking to figure it out. Don't blame me for being better at this than you. I swear I almost slapped her. But my dad slammed his hand on the table, making everyone jump. Enough! We'll pay you back, but don't expect anything else from us. You're on your own from now on. I laughed bitterly. I've been on my own for years. The difference now is I'm done letting you take advantage of me. The next day, they handed me $1,200 in cash, their faces tight with anger. I took the money without a word. It wasn't a victory, but it was a step forward. I contacted the buyer again, and they agreed to sell the PC back to me for the same price. Picking it up felt like getting a piece of my identity back, but as much as I loved having my rig again, I now know things won't go back to the way they were. My parents and Tiffany aren't going to change, and I can't keep living under a roof where I was treated like a second-class citizen. It's time to figure out my next move. I honestly thinking of moving out. Is it a good idea, or am I putting myself in more trouble? Update 2. Hey again. So after my last update, I started brainstorming ways to get out. I knew moving out wasn't going to be easy. I didn't have a huge savings cushion, and rent wasn't cheap. But I had my freelance work, and I was determined to make it work. I called Ethan. He had been my sounding board through this whole mess, and I knew he'd have ideas. Dude, you need to get out of there, Ethan said as soon as I told him my plan. You can crash at my place for a bit if you need to. Thanks, man, but I think I need my own space. I've been living under their thumb for too long. I just need to figure out how to swing it financially. Ethan was silent for a moment, then said, What if you doubled down on your freelance stuff? You're good at it, and there's definitely demand out there. You could even start streaming again. He wasn't wrong. I dabbled in streaming before, but life had gotten in the way. Now, with my PC back and a fire lit under me, it seemed like the perfect time to give it another shot. That night, I started researching apartments. My budget was tight, so I focused on small studios or shared housing. After a few hours of scrolling through listings, I found a tiny place a few miles away. It wasn't much, a single room with a kitchenette and a bathroom, but it was within my price range and close enough to town that I wouldn't feel isolated. I reached out to the landlord, who agreed to meet me the next day for a tour. When I walked into the apartment, it hit me how real this was becoming. The place was bare bones, but I wanted it. I signed the lease that same day and felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The next challenge was packing up my life without tipping off my family. I wasn't planning on making a dramatic exit, but I also didn't want to give them a chance to guilt trip me into staying. Over the next week, I slowly started moving my stuff out. I'd take a box or two at a time and stash it at Ethan's place until I was ready to make the final move. Meanwhile, I dove headfirst into freelancing and streaming. I updated my portfolio, reached out to past clients, and even started advertising my services on forums and social media. The response was better than I expected, and within days, I had enough work lined up to cover my first month's rent. As my move-out day approached, I started avoiding my family as much as possible. Tiffany didn't seem to notice. She was too busy flaunting her latest designer bag on social media. My dad and mom, on the other hand, seemed to sense something was up. They started dropping little comments at dinner like, "You've been awfully quiet lately," or "You should let us know if you're planning anything big." I brushed them off with vague answers, but I could feel their eyes on me. The final straw came 2 nights before my move. I was in my room, packing up the last of my gear, when my mom knocked on my door. "Can we talk?" she asked, stepping inside before I could even answer. "I don't really have anything to say to you," I muttered, shuffling papers on my desk. "Just hear me out," she said, sitting on the edge of my bed like everything was normal. "You have to understand. We didn't sell your computer to hurt you. Tiffany mentioned it when we were trying to figure out how to help her. She said you didn't use it that much anymore, and that it was worth a lot of money. We thought, maybe it was a good idea. I turned to face her, my jaw tightening. So, you're saying this was Tiffany's idea? She sighed, looking almost guilty. Not exactly. But she suggested it, and we thought she made a valid point. You've always been so independent. We thought you'd understand. Her words made my stomach churn. Tiffany had planted the seed, and my parents had just run with it. You thought I'd understand? I said, my voice sharp. Understand that you sold something I worked years for because Tiffany wanted a new wardrobe? Mom flinched but didn't respond. Instead, she stood up and left, as if her half-hearted explanation was supposed to make it all better. That's the kind of person Tiffany was. She twists things to get what she wants. She'd act innocent, drop a hint here and there, and suddenly her ideas became my parents' plans. The morning of my move came faster than I expected. I loaded up the last of my boxes and left a note on the kitchen counter. It wasn't dramatic, just a few lines explaining that I needed space and time to focus on myself. I didn't want a confrontation, and I knew if I tried to explain in person, they'd just try to guilt me into staying. Ethan met me at the apartment to help me unload. As we set up my PC in the corner of the room, I felt a sense of freedom I hadn't felt in years. That night, I went live on my streaming channel for the first time in months. The viewer count was small, but it didn't matter. I was in my own space, doing something I loved. This is how things unfolded lately. I have a bit weird feeling, but I'm trying to pass through it. Anyway, if anything pops out, I'll post an update. Final update. Hey everyone, here's an update on how things have been since I moved out. I thought leaving would be the end of the drama, but boy, was I wrong. After one day of moving out, I had freelance gigs to tackle and a stream schedule to figure out. But there was a nagging thought I couldn't shake. Would my parents even care that I'd left? Or would they just write it off as me being dramatic? I didn't want validation from them. I'd long given up on that. But part of me still wanted to know if they'd even noticed I was gone. By mid-afternoon, I got my answer. Mom called me. When I didn't pick up, she left a voicemail. You could have at least told us you were leaving, she said. Your father and I are very disappointed in how you handled this. Family is about sticking together, not running away. I deleted the voicemail without finishing it. A few minutes later, Dad tried calling, but I ignored him too. Then came the text barrage. Mom started with, "You've really hurt your mother." That was followed by, "We've always done what we thought was best for you." Then Dad chimed in with a classic, "You're being reckless." I put my phone on silent and went back to work. I wasn't about to let their guilt-tripping derail my day. But that evening, as I was setting up my stream, a new message popped up, this time from Tiffany. "You left? Lol. Guess you couldn't handle it. Anyway, Mom's freaking out, so you might want to call her before she has a meltdown." It was such a textbook Tiffany response that I didn't even bother replying. Instead, I focused on my stream. I was starting to get a small but supportive group of regular viewers, and the sense of community they brought was something I hadn't realized I needed. People who actually appreciated my skills, who showed up just to hang out and watch me do what I loved. It was refreshing. The next few weeks were a mix of progress and lingering frustrations. On one hand, my freelance gigs were picking up, and my streaming audience was slowly growing. On the other hand, my parents wouldn't stop trying to reel me back in. The texts kept coming, alternating between guilt trips and outright anger. "You're turning your back on your family," Mom wrote one day. "Tiffany's upset too. Don't you care about how your actions affect us?" Tiffany upset? That was rich. She'd barely acknowledged me when I lived there, unless she needed something, and now I was supposed to believe she cared. I ignored the texts, but they left a bitter taste in my mouth. One evening, Ethan came over to hang out and he brought it up. "So, have your parents calmed down yet?" I said. "Nope. They're still texting me like I owe them an explanation. Classic guilt play. You think they'll ever let it go?" "Probably not," I admitted. "But I'm not going back. I can't. Living there. It wasn't healthy. They don't respect me, and they never will." Ethan gave me a knowing look. "Yeah, but have you told them that?" I paused, realizing he had a point. I'd been ignoring them, but I hadn't actually confronted the root of the problem. Part of me didn't want to because I knew it wouldn't change anything, but maybe for my own peace of mind, I needed to say my piece. The next day, I sat down with my phone and started typing. It took me a while to find the right words, but eventually I sent a message to my parents. It went like this: "I've made my decision, and I'm not coming back. This isn't about being selfish. It's about doing what's best for me. I've spent years feeling like my needs didn't matter, and I can't keep living like that. I hope you'll respect my choice, but if not, I'll still be moving forward without you." I hit send and immediately felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I wasn't expecting a positive response, and I didn't get one. Mom replied with a long, rambling message about how I was being ungrateful, and how Tiffany's happiness had always been their priority because she needed more support. Dad followed up with a blunt, "You'll regret this someday." But instead of feeling hurt or angry, I felt free. At least, I didn't feel the need to argue or explain myself further. Their words didn't hold the same power they used to. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into my work and streaming. One day, while scrolling through social media, I came across a post from Tiffany. It was a selfie of her holding a designer purse with the caption, "So grateful for my amazing parents who always prioritize what matters." I rolled my eyes and kept scrolling. I didn't need to engage. Let her have her little fantasy world. It wasn't my problem anymore. A few days later, a family friend ran into me at a coffee shop. "I heard you moved out," they said, raising an eyebrow. "Your parents are having a tough time, you know. They've been asking everyone for help." I frowned. "Help? What do you mean?" "They've overextended themselves, buying things for Tiffany. I think they thought you'd still be there to pitch in." I shrugged, taking a sip of my coffee. "That's unfortunate." And I meant it. It was unfortunate. For them. For me? I'm doing great without them. After that conversation with the family friend, I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of validation. My parents' finances falling apart wasn't something I took joy in. It just confirmed what I'd known for a long time. They'd prioritized Tiffany's wants over the family's stability for years, and now they were dealing with the consequences. Meanwhile, I was finally learning what it meant to be independent, and I wasn't about to let their choices drag me back into their chaos. That didn't stop the guilt trip texts from coming, though. Mom's messages became more desperate. "We're struggling here, and you've left us to deal with everything on our own." Then there was Dad's favorite line. "If you were a good son, you'd help your family in their time of need." A good son? That was rich coming from someone who couldn't even acknowledge my hard work, let alone respect it. Tiffany stayed silent, though. She didn't reach out, and honestly, I didn't expect her to. She probably figured she'd let our parents do the heavy lifting and wait for me to cave. One day, Ethan came over again. He had a grin like he had something big to tell me. "Guess who I ran into at the store today?" he said as we sat down. "Who?" I asked, already knowing it was probably someone connected to my family. "Your mom," Ethan said, chuckling. "She cornered me by the frozen pizzas and went on this whole rant about how you've abandoned them. She even said you're being influenced by bad company, which I'm assuming is me." I rolled my eyes. "Of course she did. What did you say?" "I told her you're doing great, and maybe if they respected you more, you wouldn't have had to leave," Ethan said, smirking. She didn't take it well. I laughed, but inside it stung a little. Not because of what Mom said. At this point, I was used to her dramatics, but because it was another reminder of how little they understood me. They weren't upset because they missed me. They were upset because they'd lost control. A few days later, Mom sent another text. This one different from the others. "Your sister's birthday is coming up. We'd like you to come home for dinner." It would mean a lot to her. I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me wanted to believe this was their way of extending an olive branch, but I knew better. It wasn't about reconciliation. It was about appearances. They wanted to play happy family for a night, and I was supposed to pretend everything was fine. I showed Ethan the text, and he shook his head. "Don't do it, man. They're just going to pull you back into their drama." "I know," I said, sighing. "But if I don't go, it's just going to give them more ammo to say I'm the bad guy." "Who cares what they say?" Ethan shot back. "You're not living your life for them anymore. You don't owe them anything." He was right, of course. Deep down, I knew that. But saying no to my family, even after everything, was harder than I wanted to admit. So I did something I hadn't done since I moved out. I called Mom. When she picked up, her voice was dripping with fake warmth. "Oh, honey, it's so good to hear from you." "Hey, Mom," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "I got your text about Tiffany's birthday." "Yes, we're having a nice dinner, just the family," she said quickly. "Tiffany would love for you to be there." "I don't think I can make it," I said firmly. "I'm really busy with work right now, and honestly, I don't think it would be a good idea." There was a long pause before she responded. "You're really going to let your sister down like this? After everything we've done for you?" And there it was, the guilt card, right on schedule. "Mom, this isn't about Tiffany. It's about the fact that every time I try to have a relationship with you guys, it feels like I'm the only one putting in any effort. I'm not coming to dinner because I'm done pretending everything's fine when it's not." She didn't take it well, to say the least. "Fine," she said. "If you want to throw your family away, that's your choice. But don't come crying to us when you realize what you've lost." That was the last straw. "Mom, I've spent my entire life trying to earn your approval, and it's never been enough. So no, I'm not throwing anything away. I'm just finally putting myself first. Goodbye." I hung up before she could respond, my hands shaking. It felt like cutting a rope that had been holding me back for years. I wasn't sure what would come next, but I knew I couldn't keep living in their shadow. After that call, I blocked mom and dad's numbers. It wasn't an easy decision, but I knew it was necessary. The constant texts and calls weren't helping anyone, and I needed space to focus on my own life. Tiffany didn't even bother reaching out, which honestly made things easier. With the family drama out of the picture, I was able to throw myself fully into my work and stream. One night, while I was streaming, someone in the chat asked, "What made you start streaming?" For a moment, I hesitated. I hadn't talked about my family situation publicly. It felt too personal, but then I realized it didn't matter. I started streaming because it's something I'm passionate about, I said, but also because I wanted to prove to myself that I could build something on my own without anyone holding me back. The chat lit up with messages like, "Respect," and "You're an inspiration, dude." It felt good to know people appreciated what I was doing, not just for the gameplay, but for the story behind it. As the weeks turned into months, I noticed that I wasn't angry anymore. I still didn't want a relationship with my parents or Tiffany, but I didn't feel the need to dwell on it. Cutting ties had given me the peace I needed to move forward, and for the first time, I felt truly free. One day, Ethan and I were hanging out, and he asked, "So, do you think they'll ever apologize?" I shrugged. "Probably not, but honestly, I don't need them to. I'm finally living my life on my own terms, and that's enough for me." And it was. Now I'm building a life where my hard work is valued and my passions are celebrated, not dismissed. To anyone reading this and dealing with something similar, you don't have to stay where you're not respected. You deserve better. And walking away isn't giving up. It's choosing yourself. Thank you guys for all your support and comments. It really meant a lot to me.